there, and welcome back to Dolls Amok. Today we're going to do a customizing of Truly Me 118. This is a doll that is relatively new to me. I bought her back in January. I was just a little bit disappointed with her. She's beautiful, but I feel like she's not as interesting as my other Nanea face mold dolls. I do have a comparison video of her with Ariel, Truly Me 119, and Truly Me 120, the 4 Nanea face mold dolls in my collection, if you would like to see that. And I just felt like compared with the other Nanea face mold dolls in my collection, she's a little bit less interesting. So I have been contemplating some possibilities for customization for this girly. My first inspiration is to give her brown eyes. American Girl has never yet given a Nanea mold doll brown eyes, although there have been 6, to my knowledge, Nanea mold dolls that they've created. So I thought that would be a good place to start. I'm also going to remove her lower lashes, which again, just like on my customization of Truly Me 126, are bugging me a little bit just because she's so pale, her skin tone is so light. So we're going to go ahead and take away those lower lashes. We're going to give her brown eyes. And I'm pretty determined to do a wig swap as well. I want to do something that will just spark some interest. I feel like she's a beautiful doll as is, but for me in my collection, she's definitely not as interesting as my other dolls. So I want to do something with her to just make her pop a little bit more. I am planning to freckle her. I think I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of lip painting to give her a little bit more contrast. Go ahead and give her some more color in her cheeks. I feel like American Girl is making the dolls very pale, very kind of colorless at this point, which is fine. It's a look, but I like them to be a little rosier. So I think we're going to go ahead and give her a blushing. We're going to give her a freckling. We're going to give her an eye swap. We're going to remove those lower lashes. And we're going to decide on a new style and color of hair for her. It's a very gray, somber, overcast February day. I woke up with a big case of the blahs, and in my experience, doing something creative is the best way to combat that. We're going to do this creative project. We're going to make Truly Me 118 into something really unique and special in my collection and see where it takes us. The first thing I do when I'm customizing a doll is I cut the stitches closing the gap at the back of the neck with my seam ripper, and then I use my sharp tool to cut the zip tie. That enables me to take off the head. Next, it's time to heat the head, which I do by pouring in boiling water and letting it sit for about 3 minutes. This is necessary to remove the eyes, and it does help to loosen the glue on the wig as well. Once the eyes are removed, it's a little easier to remove the painted lashes. That way I don't have to worry about accidentally getting the acetone onto the eye mechanism itself. I do have a video showing me removing the lashes on number 126 while her eyes are in place. It's just a lot quicker and easier to do it if you're also doing an eye swap. After using 100% acetone to remove her painted eyelashes, I'm just washing around the eye socket with some very gentle, mildly soapy water. To perform the eye swap, I have to reheat the head so it's very hot and stretchy so that I can put the new eyes in. Unfortunately, I thought my camera was on while I was performing the eye swap, but it wasn't, so I didn't get any footage of me putting the eyes in. It went very easily. It did take me a few minutes to straighten them and get them looking right at me. Now that her head has been heated twice, in theory, it should have loosened the glue that attaches the wig. However, she was not willing to let go of this wig, and it took a lot of prying for me to even make a small hole at the side so I could start pulling it off. You can really see me struggling with that. It's sort of a tricky process. It's definitely one where I'm still learning. Ideally, I'd like to be able to preserve the wig that I'm removing so that it could be reused or sold for somebody else. But at this point, it's a bit random. Sometimes they come off really easily and sometimes they don't. And this one did not. One thing that I have to watch for when I'm removing a wig from a doll whose head I've heated is the vinyl is actually a little weaker when it's hot and it can tear depending on the tenacity of the glue. I was able to get this wig off without damaging her vinyl, so that's a good thing. You can see me continue to struggle with this wig until I started to get a small gap. Once I have the gap and I can fit the spoon in there, then I can start prying the wig loose, and that's always a really good feeling. It's actually a really fun process. I actually really enjoy taking the old wig off. I don't know what that says about me. I try not to think about it too much. Once you have a pretty good sized gap, then you have more leverage and it's a lot easier to pull that wig off. And it comes off usually with very little damage once you've got it started. You can see that she did have it tear and there was some hair left on the head that I had to pull off with pliers. Once the wig has been removed, we get to the really fun creative part, which is starting her face up. The first step is mixing a color that I'm happy with for her blush, and that's what I'm doing here. I use Folk Art Craft acrylic paints and floating medium for the face painting. Face painting is where the really artistic side of customizing a doll comes in. I find it very therapeutic. I've done artistic things all my life, and so this draws on other skills I have in drawing and painting. It definitely takes practice, and the only way to really learn is to customize a doll and then customize another doll and then customize another doll. And then you start to develop techniques that work for you. This is the technique that currently works for me for adding blush to the face. You can see me tapping my paint in the color that I've created and then in the floating medium and then tapping it on her cheek and then just rubbing and then removing with the cotton balls and repeating that process until she has an amount of color that I'm satisfied with. And then I repeat the same process for the nose. Now it's time for freckles. Freckling is so fun. It starts with creating a good color for freckles that matches the skin tone of the doll in question. The lighter the skin tone, the lighter you can go with the color of the freckles, and vice versa. For darker skin tones, you need darker, more prominent color for the freckles. So I just mix the paint and kind of dab it on my white paper until I have a color that I think will work, and then I start making dots on her face. The really hard part of freckling is creating a random pattern that looks very natural with different sizes of freckles. This definitely takes practice, and I'm very definitely still learning. This is where having the right brush really comes in handy. You want to find the smallest brush that you can, because no matter how pointy you think your brush is, it ends up making dots bigger than you think. I'm still learning how to make really fine light freckles. The other technique that I've found is removing the paint after I've made the dots with a cotton ball to lighten the paint until it looks right to my eye. Next, I'm going to go in with a different color of brown, a slightly darker brown. This is another thing I'm trying out, is making two different layers of freckles with two different browns, one lighter and one darker. The trick with freckling a doll is definitely to not overdo it and to stop before you think you should. Unless, of course, you really want the all over freckle look, which can be super fun too. Now that I have a freckle pattern I'm satisfied with, the next step is to paint her lips. I try to use a color very similar to the color I created for the blush. This way the lip color and the blush will match each other. Painting lips is the part of customizing a doll and doing custom face paint that I currently find the most challenging. It does seem really hard to get a smooth layer of color that's really light and yet covers up the old color of paint without showing any brush strokes. So this is an area where I continue to improve and look forward to improving. I had really good success with this doll though. The only issue I had was the shape of the lip getting away from me on one side. Fortunately, acrylic paints are very forgiving and until they dry can be removed with water. So when it's not going well, I just try to take a step back, take a deep breath, wipe it off with water or correct it with the side of my finger or something like that, and then just go in again. Also using the right brush, I'm currently using a very small flat brush to get the layers of paint, and then I go in with a fine point brush to do the edges. For this particular doll, I wanted her lip paint to look just very natural, maybe slightly glossed. I didn't want it to be real bright, so I just went with two layers of paint and they went on pretty nicely. I didn't have too much trouble getting the paint thinned out with the floating medium and was able to get it around her teeth without too much trouble. So I'm pretty happy with the result on this one. For me, the trick with doing a good job on the lip paint is keeping a very light, relaxed touch and also having a very steady hand. Here you can see me just continue to work the edges of the shape of the lip and correct the edge. You can see where I've gone awry. I just wipe it off with my finger and then keep going in. It's important to not give up and just be patient and keep trying until it's the shape that you want. Definitely the slowest part of the process. It takes the most patience, but I'm finally satisfied. Once the lips are painted, I'm going to protect them with a layer of varnish. And I actually do two layers. I choose matte or glossy depending on what effect I want. For this doll, I wanted it to have a slight glossed look, so I went with a glossy varnish. I do one layer, let it dry, and then I do a second layer over that. Now it's the next day and we have better light and you can see how her face paint turned out. The first step is to put her back together. That means removing the cut zip tie that I cut at the very beginning of this customizing process and give her a neck string. So that's what I'm doing here. Then we're going to tie that neck string with a nice square knot, put her head back on, and then we can start playing with wigs. When we get to this stage in the process of customizing a doll, it's really fun because the doll is starting to come together and is starting to feel like an actual person. And that's really fun. Also, I tend to connect a lot more with my dolls because of working on them so hard during the customizing process. When I started this customizing project, I didn't know what wig I wanted to use, but by this stage in the process, I knew exactly what I wanted to use. This is my very favorite wig that I've ever bought from Dallas Doll Company. It's called Tuscan Sun. It's a lovely highlighted medium brown, very similar actually color family to the wig that 118 comes with, but it's straight, it's incredibly fine and silky. It has the most beautiful highlights and lowlights in it. It looks like a girl with brown hair who spends a lot of time in the sun and has natural kind of bleaching. It has some cinnamon reds in it. It's just the most gorgeous wig, and I knew by this point that it was going to be absolutely perfect for her. For me, the gluing process is the single scariest part of customizing a doll. Super glue is really tough stuff. There are several kinds of glue you can use to attach a wig, but I like super glue because it is permanent and because it dries almost instantly, but that's also why it's such a challenge to work with. If you make a mistake and the glue gets on the hair, on your fingers, on the vinyl of the doll, you're kind of stuck. You can remove it with acetone, but that has risks as well, as I've learned from trial and error. So it just takes, again, a lot of patience, a steady hand, attention to detail, and honestly, some courage. This is when I tell myself to just live on the edge and go for the gusto. You can see me carefully and patiently working my way around the edge of the wig cap with the super glue. I don't bother with putting super glue in the center of the wig cap because if the edge is well attached, you won't need it. The only exception would be if you want to get the wig on at the top and then pull down the sides. But then the problem with super glue is you're going to have trouble adjusting it as that glue dries, since it does dry within about 10 to 20 seconds. The advantage of the quick drying properties of super glue is that you don't have to continue to compress the edge of the wig to get it on really tight, and that's one of the reasons why I like it. I try to just take my time, use very small amounts of glue, go slowly, smooth the hair back continually to keep the strands of hair from getting near the edge where the wet glue is, and just work it around the edge of that wig cap really carefully until I've made a full circle. Finally, it's such a relief to put the glue aside and to smooth out her hair and see how it turned out. This Dolls Doll Company wig is so gorgeous, it's hard to stop touching it. It's incredibly silky, and look how good she looks. And there you have it. Here is my new custom doll. What do you think? I am incredibly pleased with how she came out. I think she's just the cutest thing. I mean, the brown eyes are perfect, and she has so much more personality now, I feel like. The freckles are so fun. She just looks like she's out to conquer the world. She turned out really, really well. I'm still learning. I haven't actually done that many fully customized dolls where I've done the blush and the freckles and the lip paint and the eye swap and the wig swap. So this is still a learning process for me, and each time it gets a little easier. I'd say this time I'm really pleased with how easily the eye swap went. Also, no mistakes with gluing the wig on. I always get really nervous when I pull out the super glue because I've had some mistakes before. I'm really happy with the freckles. That is definitely a learning process. Creating a freckle pattern that looks natural is incredibly challenging, at least for me. So that's definitely something I'm going to keep working on, but I'm really happy with how they turned out. And I think for me, the biggest victory for this particular custom doll is the lip paint. I'm going to bring her closer to the camera. This is something that takes a lot of steadiness and practice, just a really light touch. And this is something that I am definitely still learning how to do. But these lips went really smoothly. I only had one little challenge with the shape on one side where the brush kept wanting to get away from me, but it turned out really well. I like the color. It's exactly what I was going for, just a little bit more rosy than what she came with. Also, the way that they turned out a little fuller than her original lips, which I really like. So I'm really happy. She now has some facial coloring. I did add the blush, and I always do a little blush on the nose as well. So she just has a little bit more life and vibrancy. I think the brown eyes are amazing. And I just feel like this is really evidence of what a missed opportunity it was for American Girl to not make at least one Truly Me doll or historical character with the Nenea mold and brown eyes, because look at her. I mean, look at those big brown eyes. That is the cutest thing. Also, of course, I did remove the lashes, which I think just makes a world of difference as far as her overall appearance. So there she is. Really excited to have her in my lineup now. Now I feel like she is a doll that I can get excited about getting to know, whereas before in her original state from the factory, it just was leaving me a little bit meh. So here we are. Let's put her in the lineup with my other dolls. If you watched my Nea comparison video, you would have seen these other girlies. So there they are. There are my Nenea mold girls with my Truly Me customized Truly Me 118 in the lineup. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. What would you do differently? Does this inspire you to customize a doll? Are you somebody who enjoys painting on dolls? Because the more I do it, the more fun it is, and it just always brightens my day. I hope you have a wonderful doll day and play with dolls. Bye!